If your child attended class with a sexual offender, you might not never know. North Carolina protects the privacy of minors, even those with a history of committing violent crimes.
News 13's Mike Mason investigates juvenile justice and how laws in North and South Carolina balance rehabilitation and privacy concerns with public safety.
Their laws are geared more towards informing the public. In North Carolina, though, lawmakers feel a juvenile's right to privacy outweighs the public's right to know about their criminal history. There could be a student sex offender in your child's classroom, but you would never know.
They have a right to their privacy. They're still children.
North Carolina's law strictly protects the privacy of all juvenile offenders, including teens who commit sex crimes.
There's a lot of children in the foster care system with sex offenses. They're a hard to place child. That's one of the reasons why I do foster care.
This woman is specially certified to foster juvenile offenders. We chose to conceal her identity. Her training is designed to help offenders turn things around, especially those who have committed sex crimes.
I know by going to court weekly that there's a lot of kids in the system that are having these charges.
Court-ordered probation for teen offenders often requires them to have constant supervision, even at school. One Asheville City school principal tells us they also develop safety plans for these high-risk students.
There is that level of supervision where we're even tracking a student through the hallway. Sometimes it's an actual escort.
According to state statute, when a student commits an offense that would be considered a felony in adult court, the Division of Juvenile Justice, or DJJ, is required to notify the principal.
If that were my foster child, I would definitely go to the school counselor and notify them.
But News 13 found one instance where a teen sex offender attended a Buncombe County school last fall for most of the school year without the additional supervision required by his probation.
There needs to be some better safeguards in the school system to make sure no cases fall through the cracks.
Asheville attorney Jason Wilson worked as a public defender before going into private practice.
Right.
His specialty? Representing juvenile offenders, many accused of sexual offenses.
If I had a child in the local school system, I believe that I would want to have some knowledge.
Wilson says laws that protect a juvenile offender's privacy could also place innocent children at risk.
You could potentially have the juvenile that's on probation reoffend in some way, and there will be another victim out there.
Laws in South Carolina are geared more towards protecting the public.
They have very strict sex offender laws down there.
According to South Carolina statute, all juveniles, regardless of age, are required to register if they commit certain sex crimes. Their information, including mugshots, is then posted to the state's sex offender website for everyone to see. But in North Carolina, if a juvenile is required to register, their information still remains protected and can only be accessed by school officials and law enforcement.
What I would say is that if parents don't like that, the answer is not at the school level, it's a legislative issue.
According to South Carolina lawmakers, protecting a sex offender's identity could pose a risk to the community. When drafting the state statute, they wrote, "Statistics show sex offenders often pose a high risk of reoffending. Law enforcement's efforts to protect communities are impaired by the lack of information about these convicted offenders."
What are the chances of people like this reoffending?
High.
In South Carolina, several state agencies also keep track of sex offenders, making it less likely they'll slip through the cracks. If that does happen, in North Carolina, parents would never know, forcing them to rely on their instincts instead of the system for their child's safety.
As a parent, if I don't like who my child is hanging out with, I'm going to have some conversation with my child about that. And I'm not unusual about that. I mean, that's what parenthood is being willing to make the hard calls for your children.
But if you don't know about their friend's history, how would you know to talk to them about it?
That's a good question.
Officials with DJJ refused our request for an on-camera interview. Despite North Carolina's strict laws protecting a juvenile's identity, our state remains one of only 2 in the country that prosecute 16 and 17-year-olds as adults.